Hey everybody, Will Snyder here. So I thought I'd do a little video today and dealing with weathering of a tank car. This Sunoco tank car I did last week, and it seems to have generated a lot of conversation into tank car weathering, which is a little more, I don't want to say harder, but a little more fearful to do. It just kind of, I can understand where people are afraid to try to weather a tank car. So I thought I'd do this video on a step-by-step what I've done. So one of the first things, as you can see, this is last week's tank car that I did that was basically already silver painted Sunoco. And then this week I want to do this Firestone tank car, which is in a lighter gray. So I'm going to try to take you step by step. I'll be shutting the video on pause a good bit as I mix paints and go through things. But the first thing that I want to do is using Tamiya XF56 metallic gray. I'm going to put a light coat of the metallic gray right across the top of the car to get some of that where the paint is starting to wear down and you're starting to pick up a little sheen of the steel underneath. So hold on a second. So basically I'm just putting just a very light spray around the top of the car, maybe a little bit heavier right around the walkway, and about like that. Not much of a spray, just adding a little bit of color. Okay, moving right along to step 2. I'm using Vallejo. It's actually a German military color, RLM61, which is German black brown, and I'll be using that to show the grime and the dirt that lies on top of the tank car. And it's basically the same thing, just light coat across the top. About like that, just enough to cover over top the metallic gray and start to get a nice coat of grime. Okay, on to the next step. Now's where it starts getting a little intimidating for some people, but what we're going to do in quadrants of the car, we're going to spread on some AK dark streaking grime. This is an enamel that basically we'll be putting on with a Q-tip, letting it set a minute, and then taking it back off with another type of Q-tip. And the nice thing is, if you put this on, it will come back off fairly simple, and if you let it set a little bit, of course it's going to stick a little more to the car, so you can kind of control the amount that's on the car. And when you see me first do this, you'll be thinking, oh my, he's ruined it, he's put too much on, but you'll see here in a bit. So basically, just taking the streaking grime and applying it to the car thus. Now, I don't want the car to be extremely dirty, so I'm going to be taking the grime back off fairly quick. Once it's applied like that, you can get these Q-tips in the makeup section at Walmart, and there's basically 3 different types of Q-tips that come in this. They're really handy for getting into the different spots that you need to get into. I usually start out with the real wide end, and what we'll start doing is well, before I do that, yeah, we'll just start taking it back off again. So as you can see, I'm just wiping back off what I've put on. And the black enamel will stay in around the high ridges and the detail of the car. So that okay, that's just a little on the heavy side for me. So I'm actually going to take a rag, wipe a little more of it off. Okay, so now you can see you're starting to get a coat of grime all around the detail parts. If you look at this end compared to this end. Now I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so that this doesn't become a real lengthy video, and finish this step on the entire car. So I'll be back shortly. So one of the things I was doing this, I did want to point out that with the tank cars being cylindrical shape, that you definitely want to keep your Q-tip strokes running bottom to top, top to bottom. Keep it vertical on the car, not horizontal. You could take that initial wipe with a soft rag to get the heavy part of the enamel wash off, but as you start to finally detail it and let it soak and set in, you definitely want to keep your strokes very vertical. Okay, as I've been doing this car, another thing I wanted to point out, when you're putting the wash around the dome, you definitely want to clean out more around the sides of the car, of the dome, and leave a little more on the top, especially if you're doing steam era, where cinders, soot, and things would have came across the car and settled down on it. So in order to have a little more convincing weathering job, you just want to clean those sides off a little cleaner than what the top is. Okay, well, I finally got the entire car with a coat of that AK dark streaking grime, and as you can see, now the entire car is starting to take on a used but not abused look. Our next step is a little bit more intimidating, but just take your time in doing this. You're going to use, the company's called MIG, Streaking Effects. It's called Rainmark Effects. And basically, especially tank cars, you see that streaking down the side of the car when when it has rained or shortly after a rain, and it stays around for quite a while. So basically what I'm going to do, let's see if so I'm taking the rain effects and I'm just applying a wet coat across the top, roughly maybe 1/3 of the car. I'll let that set a minute. Get a little off that handrail. And then very carefully with the wide Q-tip from the makeup Q-tip set, you're just going to start to run that Q-tip from the bottom up and take that excess streaking enamel off. Now, as you can see, I'm going to have to go down here the opposite direction. And once that dries, you'll see an also subtle effect of the rain. So I will finish up the car and show it to you when I get everything finished up. Okay, before we start getting into the actual light rusting of the car, I want to get that road dirt and grime around the base of the car. So what I'm going to be doing is airbrushing Tamiya XF72, which is a brown, around the base of the car, and then I'll finish right behind that with a little bit of MIG light dust, and I'll give that a light coat around the car. So let's do a little airbrushing. Basically, I'm just kind of trying to pick up that road dirt that gathers around the bottom of the car, around the trucks. Doesn't have to be real heavy. Just enough on there to allow you to start to see some detail. So about like that, let me mix up my light dust and we'll spray that and I'll show you the results. Alrighty, well, now that we've gotten the car rather dirty and some service look to the car, we're starting into the final phases now. We're just a little light rusting here and there. And the first thing we're going to use is AK Rust Streaks. This is also a type wash, but I'm actually going to be applying it with airbrush. And this is the dark rust, and right behind that we'll follow it with crusted AK crusted rust deposits. And that'll give you your fresh, new looking type rust. And then we'll just finish that up with a little bit of weathering powders to get the texture that we're looking to get. So, alright, bear with me here and we'll apply the first coat of rust. Yeah, I'm basically looking at doing walkway up at the dome, surface. Around the tank. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add just a little bit of rust right off of these brackets that hold the handrail. And I'll put a little bit of rust on the top of the dome. Like I said, these are mostly flat surfaces. Other than these brackets, just the flat surfaces where water would lay and things would begin to rust. And that's just about all you want of the dark rust. While I have it, I just remembered I need to stand here and put a little rust around the trucks. Almost overlook them. And the couplers. But we will use weathering powders to make up the bulk of that rust. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, well, let's hit it now with a little bit of the light rust. You want to be really careful. This is one that you could overdo. You just want to keep it very, very light. You may have a concentrated area. And as you folks can see, I sometimes have the tendency to paint myself as much as I do the freight cars. Okay, I just want to narrow that spray down a little bit. And you want to end up with something that looks about like that. I know that it's kind of hard to see in the video, along with the fluorescent lighting kind of messes with video, but hopefully when I get finished you'll be able to see everything real well, and we'll put it on the layout so you can see it under a different light. Alrighty, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. We're not far from being finished. So what we're going to do now is turn our attention to the trucks, the wheels, the couplers, and we're going to start out by using a burnt umber light paint. And what I'm going to be doing basically is adding some color to the hub of the wheels by just getting the paint brush in there and spinning the wheel till I get a nice even coat of paint around the entire hub. One of the things I do like about this method is once the cars are up running on the layout, you physically can see the wheels turning as opposed to just an all black truck, all black wheel. You have the tendency to see more motion in this. Also now, while I'm in this area, I'll be hitting the top of the bolsters, a little bit around the bearing caps and such. So let me finish up the other wheels and I'll get right back with you. Alrighty, well, I finished using the burnt umber. Now we're going to go over the car a little bit with burnt sienna. which is a more of a reddish, lighter reddish brown color, and just getting different shades of rust in different areas. Kind of almost want to dry brush it around the brake wheel. Hit the springs of the car, of the wheels, springs of the trucks. Kind of go over those bearing caps again with a little lighter color on top of the dark. Just I think in this case, let's just put a little bit of light rusting on the ladder. There we go. Alright, I'll finish this up and be right back. Okay, so you can stay with me. Basically, I did a little bit around the springs of the trucks, a little over the coupler, back over the handbrake wheel. Now I'm just lightly hitting these handrails here and there where there's just a little bit of surface rust. And so far, I must say I'm pretty happy with how we're turning out here. So, okay, that's just about it. This is where a little can go a long ways. So we got one step left. That's the weathering powders, and this car will be finished. Stand by for the last step. Alrighty, well, we're down to the final steps. And this is where I start using pigments. I use the Vallejo. There's two colors that I prefer to use over anything. The brown iron oxide, which is a darker reddish brown, and then the lighter new rust, light brown orangish oxide. You can buy these pigments in a 4-pack of 4 different shades of rust. These two just happen to be my favorites. I apply them with a Q-tip, and basically I start with the dark color first. I'll dip the Q-tip into the pigment, and let's see if I can get this where you can see. And I'll definitely put the pigment right around the areas that I want it. Nice thing here is if you get too much on, you can brush it off. So I just go around the car, different places that I want some a little bit heavier rusting. For me, it's the couplers, these walkways on tank cars. I will say they did keep tank cars in really decent shape as far as serviceable, and so that they weren't a problem. All right, let me finish putting this dark on, and I'll put the light on and show you the finished car. All right, we're doing the very last step. We're using the lighter oxide right around the areas that I have the dark. And basically what you're doing here is you're adding some texture to the rust. Of course, couplers and knuckles all get good and rusty since they never had any real paint on them. This is just one of those deals where texture just makes the difference. got just a little bit too much on, but never panic. Just rub it right back off. And let me finish up the other side of this car and I'll show you the finished product. Alright, well, here we have it, the finished product. I'm not sure how well you can see in this lighting, but in a minute we'll take it over to the layout. Hopefully there'll be a little bit better lighting to be able to see the different shades and effects on the car. I'll put it on the layout along with the Sunoco tank car that I did last week. So hold on, we'll go over to the layout room and I'll try to wrap this tape up because it's getting a little longer than I initially wanted. Alrighty, so here we go, the finished tank cars. The Sunoco on the left that I did last week, and the Firestone one that I just did. Give me a second and I'll flip the Firestone one around so you can see both sides. And then I'll try to get a little bit different angle for you. Alright, and here would be the other side of the car. And we'll just wrap this up. I'm trying to get a few close-ups. Now, one of the things I did on the Sunoco car, if you notice across the top of the tank itself, there's a slight light rusting. I did not do that on this car. You wouldn't have it on every car, but there's just so many different things that you can do. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it helps. Do keep in mind that just my way is not exactly the only way or right way. It's just the way that I like to weather things. And like we had talked before, tank cars in particular have unique challenges. So anyway, I hope you all have enjoyed. I hope this helps. And have fun model railroading and don't be afraid to try. All right, thanks again.